Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking all about how supply shock drives the growth of Bitcoin. So before we dive in, if you're curious to stay up to date with everything, all the latest news in the crypto space and everything to do with Bitcoin, please subscribe below, drop a thumbs up and a like on this video. It really helps with the algorithm and getting the videos out there more, so that will be much appreciated. And without further ado, we're going to jump into today's video. So first and foremost, the first thing we need to understand is the supply dynamics of Bitcoin at a macro level. So you may already be aware of this, but there are only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin in existence. There will never be more than that. There cannot ever be more than that. And the scarcity of this asset is what, most people who are interested in it and actually understand it, we know, and the people who truly believe in it know that the underlying asset here is scarcity, and the fact that Bitcoin is so scarce, that's what drives demand in the long run. So 21 million Bitcoin can only ever be in existence. We're already at 19.59 million Bitcoin in circulation. So that leaves us with about 1.4 Bitcoin left to come into circulation over the next 116 years or so, because the last Bitcoin that will be mined is due to happen in and around the year 2140. And that's based on the halving cycles that we're going to take a look at now in a moment. So understanding that there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin and that there's already 19.5 million Bitcoin in the circulating supply is crucial to understanding the supply and demand economics of how Bitcoin actually works. The next thing we need to understand is how the halving cycle impacts and creates a supply shock every 4 years. So since 2009 and the inception of Bitcoin, every 4 years we have a halving cycle where the block reward that miners receive for successfully adding blocks to the network gets cut in half. So back in 2009, the block reward was 50 Bitcoin per block mined and successfully added to the network. In the 2012 halving, that got reduced to 25. In the 2016 halving, that got reduced to 12.5. That further got reduced to 6.25 in 2020. So what we're going to have in April, May of this year with the next Bitcoin halving in 2024 is a further reduction in the block reward for miners down to 3.125 Bitcoin per block. Subsequently in 2028 getting halved again, and every 4 years that gets halved until the year 2140 when the final Bitcoins will be actually mined and added to the network. So clearly we can see that the way in which this is orchestrated is geared towards drip feeding a supply of Bitcoin onto the network over a very long period of time, but the reward diminishing every 4 years creates a supply shock for the network and the market as a result of that. As a block reward after every 4 years, that means that the amount of Bitcoin entering circulation every 4 years is cut in half as well. So obviously from 2009 to 2012, we had 10.5 million Bitcoin entering the system, entering into circulation. The next 4 years after that, from 2013 to 2016, 2012 to 2016, we obviously had only 5.2 million, 2.6 million, 1.2 million from 2020 to 2024, and then about 80,000 is only going to enter the system between 2024 until the 2028 halving. So again, this supply shock is what causes the price to significantly increase and almost kickstarts the bull market every single time we have this 4 year cycle, as we'll see. And with the reward happening every 4 years, there's an interesting correlation with how much the price increases in the 150 to 365 days after the halving event. Now, if you've seen some of our other videos, we discuss how typically we will see the peak of the bull market happening 12 to 18 months after any halving event from the past 3 halving cycles. And that's reflected in the price here in this table. So we can see after the 2012 halving, the US dollar price on the day of the halving was $12.35. 365 days later, the price of one Bitcoin was over $1,000. 2016, similar results here with $650 on the day of the halving. The price 365 days later was $2,500. Again, 2020 halving, $8,000 price on the day of the halving. 365 days later, $55,900. And even a few months after that, we obviously saw the market peak out at about $69,000 for an all-time high of the Bitcoin price. So there's this very interesting dynamic of the market cycles and how we see a peak in the 12 to 18 months after it. So the next thing we're going to look at is how there's a diminishing supply on both exchanges and in terms of the liquid supply of Bitcoin. So since 2020, we've had this very interesting trend here where the amount of Bitcoin available on the exchanges, on all of these major exchanges, has been decreasing. And obviously in the 6-7 years prior to that, we had seen an increasing balance of Bitcoin being held by exchanges. And there was this very interesting inflection point around 2020. If we drew a line straight down here, we've got literally these trend lines for all these different exchanges is on a downward trajectory, and that's been happening since 2020. So the interesting thing to note here is that we're getting less and less supply coming into circulation every 4 years. And then this inflection point happening in 2020 where there is not as much liquid Bitcoin being held on exchanges for people to actually purchase, and coupling that with the illiquid supply of Bitcoin that is in the market. So what we're seeing in this chart here is a trend line going all the way up here where we've got the illiquid supply of Bitcoin reaching an all-time high. So the illiquid supply is basically showcasing to us that there's large numbers of people reaching an all-time high in 2023 that are holding their Bitcoin in wallets and not moving it for extended periods of time. So the illiquid supply shows us that there's not as much Bitcoin moving in and out of wallets, and there's also not as much Bitcoin available on exchanges. And all of this is happening in the lead up to this next halving event, which is happening in 4 to 5 months' time. So this is the liquid supply. So this is showing us how the illiquid supply has been increasing since the previous halving in around 2021, reaching an all-time high. We can see that the liquid supply, so the actual available supply of Bitcoin, has been dropping since 2020. Very similar mapping to the Bitcoin balance on exchanges here, where we had that inflection point, that turning point in March 2020. The liquid supply of Bitcoin is decreasing, and the amount of Bitcoin that is available in the liquid supply today is the same as it was all the way back in 2018. So there has never been this little amount of Bitcoin available in the liquid supply since pretty much the beginning of 2018, which is 6 years ago at this point. So very interesting dynamics happening in the market here. As I said, we are very close to the next Bitcoin halving, 138 days away. Estimated Bitcoin halving date of May 25th, 2024. Again, the halving happens roughly every 4 years. It happens at a block height every 10,000 blocks. So the block height that is expected to happen at is 840,000. We're currently on 824,000. So hence the estimate for the halving date occurring around May 25th of this year. So it's almost like the perfect storm happening where we have, supply and liquid supply decreasing with every 4-year cycle. And interestingly, at the point in time where we are right now, with ETFs on the horizon, potentially ETFs being approved before the next halving event in 2024, and the sheer amount of purchasing power and money that can be flowing into the Bitcoin ecosystem and the entire crypto ecosystem over the next couple of months, mapping that against the decreasing supplies, I mean, it really only points to the price having to squeeze up. So it's going to be a very interesting 12 to 18 months once again. That is just, an example to showcase how the supply shock happens every 4 years, and how the price is driven by that supply shock, that halving event that occurs. And then all of this on top of that, with the illiquid supply of Bitcoin reaching all-time highs, and the amount of Bitcoin being available on exchanges decreasing since 2020, it's the perfect storm for a squeeze and higher prices for Bitcoin this year. So hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully you got something out of that, and that it was insightful for how the supply-demand economics of Bitcoin actually work. Very interesting 12 to 18 months ahead. As always, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to give a thumbs up, hit the bell notifications, and subscribe below to stay informed on everything new in the crypto space. And we'll see you in the next one.